Alright, we are now into Unit 8, that is all about quadratic equations. So today's just learning a little bit about quadratic equations. So today is what, the 15th. It's April 15th. So this is an intro to quadratic equations. We're going to learn a little bit about how to graph them, what they are, their standard form, their vertex, their axis of symmetry, what kind of parabolas you can have. So the standard form. So the standard form to a quadratic equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So this ax squared plus bx plus c should look familiar because we were actually working with this in trinomials and learning how to factor. This is why we learned how to factor first and learn about polynomials before we moved on to here. The difference now is we're actually an equation because we have an equal sign in there, and the last time we were just working with expressions. So using this, we're gonna keep going. So the graph, when graphed, so when you graph a quadratic equation, the quadratic equation creates a U-shaped curve which is actually called a parabola. Parabola. And that is how a lot of quadratic equations are known, because they're known as the parabola. They're a U-shaped curve, either right side up or upside down. So the types of parabolas that we have so you can put these into your graphing calculator in your y equals form. You can put x squared plus 2x minus 5, hit graph. You're gonna see it graph up. You can see it's a U-shaped curve. It keeps going, so these lines are actually extending off into infinity. It's off-centered, and we'll learn about all that later. But the thing with parabolas is if you were to draw a line straight down the middle of them, and you folded this parabola through that imaginary line, it would match up perfectly, because a parabola is symmetrical on both sides, and the line going down the middle of the parabola is called your axis of symmetry. And then notice we have a it goes all the way down to this one point, and then when it gets to the bottom it curves and turns right back around and goes up. So it doesn't go all the way to the curve. Alright, so that was y equals x squared plus 2x minus 5. Looking at this, the graph looked a little bit like that. I think that's a pretty good graph. And then if you were to draw, we're going to do a dotted line, because this line technically does not, it won't show up. But that line, calculators graph it nicer than I can by hand, but that line would be like where you fold the paper in half, and you're going to get the same thing. So it kind of reminded me of when I was in elementary school, and I would fold a heart, like a piece of paper, straight in the middle, and then I would cut a heart out so that way your heart was symmetric on both sides. So the other parabola we can draw is one that's y equals negative x squared plus 3x plus 7. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw the coordinate plane. Okay, so this one was negative x. You can find the x right here. X squared plus 3x plus 7. Graph that. And notice that this time, this one went upside down. The main reason for that is this was a positive x squared, but this was a negative x squared. So this was an upside, happy parabola. This one's going to be more of a little bit of a sad parabola. This one looks... There we go. This is a little bit sadder. And then again, you should be able to draw a line straight down the middle. Freehanding a parabola is not the easiest thing, so it won't be perfect, but that's the idea. So what plays a fact into this is that A. So if your A is positive, then the parabola opens up. Kind of like a smile. So, happy smile, happy parabola. But if your A is negative, then the parabola opens down. Like a frown. Down like a frown. Alright, so I talked about the axis of symmetry, but let's go ahead and define that. So your axis of symmetry, it is a vertical line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. So the formula for that would be that x equals negative b divided by 2a. So the a and the b are going to come from your equation. The a is going to be the first term, the b is going to be the second term. The first number and the second number are the two that we're going to use to find the axis of symmetry. Now then, your vertex. I kind of mentioned it a little bit already, but your vertex is actually the turning point of the parabola. So one thing to know about it is when the vertex is at its lowest, it's called a minimum. So your vertex is right when it's the turning point of your parabola. So the turning point of your parabola, like right here, this one right here, goes down, and then all of a sudden it gets to one point and then it turns back around. That point right there would be your vertex. It's where your axis of symmetry crosses your parabola, because that's the lowest it's going to be. And that's called a minimum because it's the lowest spot. It's the minimum spot that you're going to hit in this parabola. But otherwise, if the highest point, so if you had an upside down parabola right here, you're going to go from a low point all the way up to the highest point and then turn back around. That's called a maximum, because it's the max this graph is going to reach. And that's what we got to define here. When the vertex is the highest point, it's a maximum. Maximum. Alright then. So let's actually work some problems out about this. So we are now into some examples. So if we have the graph, the formula, the quadratic equation y equals x squared plus 8x plus 15, I want you to remember that the formula for a quadratic equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And to find your axis of symmetry, you gotta take negative b divided by 2a. So the first thing to do would be to identify your a, your b, and your c. I find it makes it easier to work with other formulas if you know what your a, b, and c are. So your a is the term in front of the x squared. We have 1 set of x squared. We have 8 x's, and then we just have the number 15. A, b, c. Alright then. Next, you need to find your axis of symmetry. Your axis of symmetry can be found by using this. X equals negative b divided by 2a. So if b is 8, plug in 8. So negative 8 divided by 2, plug in 1 for a. So all we're doing is we're plugging in the values of the letters into the equation. So then this would be negative 8 divided by 2, which is negative 4. So hence, your axis of symmetry is where x equals negative 4. Then to find your vertex, you would put, your vertex is going to be the spot. You want to know what y is when x is negative 4. So taking your equation, y equals x squared plus 8x plus 15, plug in negative 4 for x. So then that would be negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 15. Now it's very important to put the negative 4 in parentheses because you are squaring negative 4. There is a huge difference, for example, of having negative 4 squared versus negative 4 squared. This top one squared negative 4 and then it applied the negative sign because PEMDAS says do exponents before multiplication. So that negative times just 4 squared would be a negative 1 times 4 squared. This bottom one, though, did apply PEMDAS. It applied grouping. So it said grouping. Notice that this negative 4 is grouped, and then you do the exponent, which is squaring it. So that would be negative 4 times negative 4. If you can't remember. So anything squared, any number, whether it's positive or negative, if you square a positive or negative number, you should get another positive number back. It's just like when you multiply two evens, you get an even back. You do not get an odd. Okay, so then this would give you 16 minus 32 plus 15. And then you have to do addition and subtraction from left to right. So you would do 16 minus 32 first to get negative 16 plus 15. So negative 1, and we were looking for y this whole time. So then your vertex is at the point negative 4, negative 1. And then sketching this, would be look at your A, it's positive, so it's going to be a happy parabola. It doesn't have to be, you can tell that's a parabola. Please do not be drawing random things and telling me that's a parabola. You draw your axis of symmetry, which is just a line straight down the middle. And this is the line x equals -4. And then where your axis of symmetry crosses your parabola, that is your vertex point, -4, -1. And that's it. Axis of symmetry, vertex, and your sketch. Now then, actually, if you have your calculator, I also share that website, Desmos, where you can put everything in at once. You can hit -4 squared plus 8 times the -4 plus 15. Go ahead and put that all in there, and it'll just go ahead and calculate it for you and tell you that it's -1. If you like to do it by hand, you gotta follow the steps of PEMDAS. Another example I kind of want to do is we're going to do number 6. We're going to do 6. It says y equals -3x squared minus 24x minus 42. This is good. Okay. So again, start by identifying your A, B, and C. Your A right here is this number in front, so it'd be -3. Your B is the number in front of your x, -24. And your C is the last number, -42. Another way you could have actually written that now, it's that it's A, B, and C. I just find that if you have your A, B, and C next to it, then when you're plugging things into your equation, it's easier if you can see it. So then finding your axis of symmetry, your vertex, and I'm actually going to do the sketch over here this time because I need to save it room for one more example. Alright, to find your axis of symmetry, you follow the formula x equals -b divided by 2a. So B, so B is -24, so put -24 in for B. And then put 2 and A in for, and -3 in for A. So then notice how I kept my negative sign that was in front of my negative, and I put my B in parentheses because this time your B is negative. So you gotta remember, negative times a negative is gonna give you a positive, and then a positive 2 times a -3 gives you a -3. This is actually going to give you -8. So your axis of symmetry is when x equals -8. Now to find your vertex, you just got to plug -8 in for your equation. Y equals -3 times -8 squared minus 24 times -8 minus 42. It is always important that if your value that you're plugging in is a negative number, you always put it in parentheses. You should also be putting your positive values in parentheses too when you plug those in. That just helps you so that you know, had you not put this in parentheses, then you would have been like, oh, I can do -3 minus 8 and then square that. But no, that would be completely wrong. And you would have thought that's -24 minus 8 instead of -24 times 8. So remember, put everything in parentheses. If you have a number outside of parentheses like this, that means multiplication. So doing this, you have to do your exponents first. So -8 squared would be a positive 64. -24 times a -8. A negative times a negative is a positive. That would give you a positive. Hold on. This is supposed to be a 6. 2 times a negative 3 is 6. 24 divided by negative 6 is a negative 4. So this would be a negative 4. So this is going to be a negative 4. So this is going to be a negative 4. So this is going to be a positive 16. This is what happens. Very good example of what happens when you don't check your math. Double check your math. Because I know I said negative 6, but I wrote down negative 3. So, and then once you get something wrong at the very beginning, guess what? It spirals down and makes everything else wrong. But thankfully, if you catch it, that's good. Okay. Negative 24 times a negative 4 is going to be a positive 96. Minus 42. And if you realized I was wrong when watching this video, then kudos to you. Because you can ask my students, I do simple mistakes like this quite often, and it's okay. You know what? I learned from it. I learned to keep a better eye on my multiplication. Alright, so then you have to do, before you can add or subtract, notice you still have multiplication, so we still have to do multiplication first. So then negative 3 times a 16 is actually negative 48, plus 96 minus 42. Remember, do addition and subtraction from left to right, so negative 48 plus a 96 would give you a positive 48 minus 42, which would then give you a positive 6. So y equals 6. So your vertex is when x is negative 4, y is a positive 6. Sketching this, notice your A is negative, so your sketch is actually going to be upside down this time. Upside down. And then just draw your line straight down the middle. That is your axis of symmetry. That is the line x equals negative 4. This, where your axis of symmetry crosses your parabola, that is your vertex, which is at the point negative 4, 6. And then last example, it's number 8. So y equals x squared minus 3. So if you notice something, instead of having a trinomial like we had on the other two, now this one's a binomial because it only has 2 terms. And you can see that it has its x squared, it has its just regular constant, but it's missing that linear term, that x value. So when it's missing a term like that, that just means that the number in front of it is 0. So you could also rewrite this as y equals x squared plus 0x minus 3. And then you can see your 3 terms. You can see a, b, and c. So then a is a positive 1, b is 0, and c is a negative 3. So then finding your axis of symmetry, and your vertex, and your sketch. Axis of symmetry is still x equals negative b divided by 2a. I do like to sometimes rewrite that equation every single time I do a problem, just because you see it there and you can't mess up, because you know 0 is b, so you put that in there. A is 1, so you put 1 in for a. Alright, so 0 is neither positives or negative, so you can multiply, and that's a negative 1 times 0. You can multiply negative 1 times 0, but anything times 0 is just 0 divided by 2. 0 divided by anything is just 0. So then your axis of symmetry is where x equals 0. Where x equals 0, that is actually the y-axis. And then plugging 0 into your equation, that would be 0 squared minus 3. Again, anything times 0 is just 0, so that would be 0 minus 3. So y is just equal to negative 3. So your vertex is where 0 is at 0, negative 3. So since our a is positive, we're going to draw a happy parabola. Draw your axis of symmetry about down the middle of the graph, splitting it. Label that. which you already found it. Find where it crosses your parabola and label that vertex point. So yeah. Remember guys, a really good thing to keep in mind, is when you're substituting values in, make sure you're putting them in parentheses. And when you put in -4 to be squared, you need to put that in parentheses too. So keep an eye on that. Parentheses save lives, especially in math.